Power Talks, empowering you through the voice of truth with your host, Dr. Joel Hunter.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Joel Hunter, host of Power Talks, empowering you through the voice of truth. On today's program, we have with us Brian Nelson, who's the mayor of Apopka, and David Shoreyes, pastor of First Baptist Church of Apopka, and Evan Smith, Community Resource Network Director of Faith Partnerships. I'm looking toward learning from you guys about a new initiative. I'm very excited about this initiative happening in Apopka toward the homeless in that community. And so let's talk about that, because this is fascinating about how elected officials and the faith community can cooperate together for the benefit of the entire community, and include the business community and nonprofits and so on and so forth. So I'm going to come to you first, okay. because you had some hand in initiating a conversation in Apopka that would link together some of the different faith communities. How did that happen?
Kind of happenstance, to be honest with you. And I had the amazing opportunity just over a year ago to be introduced to this really passionate group of people who started very small. And in the course of the year, we've grown this group to a pretty substantial size. And I say this a lot of times when describing how this has kind of come about. There was no great strategy, at least on my part, in planning this and building this. And I say this as well, I'm never the smartest person in any room. But I figured that if we were going to respond to homelessness, why not try and do it together? So learning that there was a small group of churches already working together, we just met on a Tuesday night at First Presbyterian Church of Apopka, actually December 5th, 2017 to be exact, and we had 7 people representing 5 different churches. And over the course of the year, we've grown. We'll actually meet tonight for our monthly meeting, and we now get about 50 people with, representing 22 different churches.
Wow,
so,
that's amazing. Mm-hmm. Pastor Shoreyes, First Baptist already had a service to the homeless going. So could you describe what you were doing with the homeless population, and then also why you think you'll be better off cooperating with other churches in the area?
Well, about 2 years ago, we saw a need of those right close to our church. We're downtown, so the homeless community hangs out right in that area, and they began coming to various things that we would have, our Wednesday night dinners in those areas. And it put a strain on the church family as many of them would come in when what had been a family time was now invaded by some of the homeless, or it felt like that. So we decided that there had to be some way to show the love of God and still have a sense of community in the church. And so I knew that I couldn't give them the time that they really deserved on Wednesday nights when my church family was there. So Bunny Acree was one of the ladies in our church who's really been instrumental and was at Evan's first meeting. Bunny and I began to talk, and we thought, well, let's give them a night. Let's have a special evening that's just theirs. So on Monday nights, we began to say, we got a hot meal. It'll be a good meal. Come and have a meal, and then we'll feed you from the Word of God. We wanted to make sure we had a spiritual component there. And if you stay for the Word of God, then if you need a set of clothes or a haircut or a shower or maybe some help with your Social Security, disability paperwork, or whatever it is, we'll help you with all of that, as long as you let us feed you with God's Word too. And it just began to blossom. It gave me a chance to spend time with them, sit at their tables, talk to them, kind of get to know who they were. And what blessed us the most is it energized our church family. Yeah. We have 70 volunteers, even 2 years later now, every Monday night that are there trying to minister to them. And we've gotten to know that community on a first name basis rather than just saying they're homeless. Yeah. There's Bill, there's Mary. That's awesome. And it's been a great
that's the key, isn't it?
Yes.
Know them as people.
That's absolutely right.
That's the key. Let me come to you, Mayor Nelson, because you've been you've been in public service for a long time. You're part of the Florida legislature. You were on the Orange County Commission, and now as mayor. Part of what's exciting about this is that our country really started out with communities taking care of its own.
Absolutely.
Largely from the faith community because they knew them personally and they knew what they needed and what they didn't need and where they could work and where they could, that kind of thing. But recently we had a different kind of, this happens in booster rockets. The first step is, people getting together, and then the second phase is when a public official, the mayor, gathers leading citizens into the commission chambers or the court, the I don't know, what do you call it, the courthouse?
City council.
City council. Yeah, that's it. It takes on a whole different flavor. What prompted you to say, if the citizens will lead this, then the public officials can do some of the organizing and give credibility to it?
Well, let me give you a great example of how this partnership has worked. We, DOH, Department of Health, came to us and said, hey, listen, there's an instance, a higher incidence of hepatitis A in the area. We'd love to go in and get a lot of the folks, homeless especially, vaccinated for hepatitis A, and it's a 2-shot series. And he said, okay, we're going to do a health fair. We'll bring in all the folks. We'll get them all vaccinated, and away we go. I go, that's not going to work in Apopka. We have churches like, First Baptist that does, a Monday night ministry. We have First Presbyterian that does a Friday afternoon ministry, feeding the homeless. I said, let's just they've got their routines. Let's stay in the routine. We'll take care of what you're asking for. We'll get people vaccinated. So we had a partnership between DOH, which supplied the immunization. We had our firefighters from the Apopka, fire department doing the vaccinations. We had, First Baptist, we had First Presbyterian, all collaborating for an effort that we have now, in the last 3 weeks, we've vaccinated almost 100 members of our community. And we know the expenses that when you get hepatitis A, that it's probably not going to kill you, but you'll wish you were dead. Yeah. So, the savings just to the medical community. And so here's a partnership. We have four groups. You got Department of Health, you got City of Apopka, you got, the 2 churches, and so DOH came back and they were about not to do it. They were about to say, you know what, we'll go a different route. They said, they finally relented and said, okay, we'll do it. And they said it's by far and away the most successful vaccinations they've ever done.
Yeah.
So we might be the model for how they go forward.
Well, that's key. What you just said is key. Evan, let me come back to you because you're working with other communities as well. And one of the things that the mayor said is that will work in our community. Yep. He knows that community and he knows to work with the people that are already, having a relationship with these folks and fitting it into what those relationships will yield and what there's no relationship yet to do. He knows. So how do you, the old preacher word is exegete a community. How do you figure out what a community's really like, what will be unique to that community, because those relationships aren't like anybody else, and the history's not like anybody else. I've said I love Apopka because it's one of those old communities that has never lost the sense of its particular identity. Never got just kind of released into the atmosphere. It's just got very much, you got a personality. So how do you do that?
I can't believe you said exegete. I just started seminary, so give me a couple more semesters and I'll know what he's talking about. Yeah, that's okay. I'll tell you, there is uniqueness in every community. There just is. But I will say, it was a couple months ago I sat down with a local pastor and he said, Evan, there's a truth in this type of work, and that is oftentimes, someone who's in crisis, someone who's in distress, either the first place they go or the last place they go is a church. And I think that's true in pretty much every community. So although there's uniqueness in history, uniqueness in population, I think that there is something to be found in every community when it comes to the faith community, because oftentimes they are the front lines when it comes to responding to homelessness, when it comes to responding to poverty. I mean, as Pastor David mentioned, you know, he is one very passionate person who's leading a church, but yet he on his own could not do what he has a vision to want to accomplish. He's got 70 people from his church who show up every single week. And that is, I think, the real uniqueness of the faith community, and what it has to offer to this regional response to homelessness is there are, you know, hundreds, if not thousands, of passionate people across this region that make up congregations who are willing to serve, you know, especially people who are living furthest at the margins. So I think that that can be found no matter the community, although Apopka itself is very special.
Yeah. Well, you know, Jesus kind of embedded, didn't he, in the gospel, a heart for those who were unincluded. Yeah. When he said the least of these, and said, you know, I identify with them.
Right.
Pastor, you have personal experience with these folks. I'm gonna throw you one from left field here. I'm gonna throw you.
He likes to do this.
I love to do this, you know, but. Can you single out, and this is difficult to do, any one homeless person or family that you have gotten to know that has you're just glad to know them, you know, you're glad to know a little bit about their story. Can you think of a particular one?
I can give. You know, and again, I want to be careful with names, but I'll just use a couple. Their name is Doug and Lynn, and Doug and Lynn began coming to our church through this ministry, and as they were attending our church, became more and more certain that there was a God who loved them despite their circumstances. And as they went through many changes over the last couple of years, and they're longtime Apopkans. They've been there all their life, and just probably some wrong roads that they took, but particularly just some bad circumstances that left them in their situation. Just Sunday, I preached a message on where it's best to invest our monies, and the things of God are certainly the best place to invest. But in that conversation, I mentioned that we never wanted to create what I would say is a panhandling environment around our church. We never wanted to enable them to stay in their, you know, less than fortunate situations. And so I said, you know, we're trying to find how to invest in helping them without creating a lifelong situation for them. And I had received a text from Lynn later on that day, says, and it just says, "Hey, love, Doug and I are not real happy with some of the things you said, but we know that your heart is good." And so then I texted her back, and I just said, "Listen, I'm going to say what's on my mind, and know that we don't want you to be in that situation. We want to help you." And immediately she says, "We know that, and we're thankful, and hopefully God will give us a breakthrough." But there's just one couple, and there are many what we've found to be the most significant that's happened to us is I could name 6 or 7 people that came to us through the ministry that finally realized God had a plan for them, and they had a place where they had a support network outside of Apopka. And once they became healthy enough to reach back out to family, wherever that was, and say, you know what, I'm ready to do life like it should be done. Can I come home? We've got another agency that is called Homeward Bound that helps us with the finances to put them on a bus or plane or whatever it takes to get them home, and they're settled in. And so we've got a number of them that's really our greatest joy is watching them, and now they're home, and we get a letter back saying that I'm working. I cleared up my court case back home. I'm taking care of my child support now that I had never done. I was running from, and now I'm doing all of that. And those are the real victories.
You know, you said something that stuck with me here, and that is what you're creating here is real relationships, and real relationships are irritating. You know, it's how we grow. You know, somebody once said that, you know, it's good to afflict the comfortable and comfort the afflicted, and so the fact that you could say something that kind of irritated them, you know, and that is, we don't want to be enabling, we want to be empowering, you know, and they could say something back to you honestly, and I imagine the original irritation of the church of who are the homeless people was exactly what the church needed to grow spiritually.
That's exactly right.
You know, and become who they need to be. This is just so great. Mayor Nelson, I want to ask you a question, because as a longtime public official, you do see the big picture. You know, you got a lot of people in the community. You have to care for the whole community. And you know that a community response is going to take a lot of different sectors from that community to really give. It's not just the faith community is doing well, it's everybody pitching in. Right. You mentioned the health community. As the mayor, who do you want at the table? You know, what are the different people you want at the table to make sure that this effort is sustainable and it comes from the whole community?
Well, I think you've got obviously the faith-based community, and it's what's so funny is when Evan got going, I said, listen, I want to help you. And so I reached out to a bunch of the pastors that weren't showing up. And so an email from me had a lot more weight than an email from Evan.
Absolutely.
And so they get 3 or 4 emails.
That's a whole different program, by the way.
But you know, so you want to get those people engaged, because what you're trying to do is make sure that you're not over giving too many support to the same group of people. You want to make sure everybody gets support.
Right.
So you get the faith community. Then the resources that the county has and the state has and the federal government has. One of the ladies that lives underneath the bridge in Apopka had never received Social Security, and she was of age, but she lost her identification. So we helped her get that, got her her ID. So it's the government from all levels, from the city to the county to the state to the federal. There are resources out there. Then if we really want to get into the long-term solutions, is education. So we need to partner with like the Valencias, which have some technical programs that get you past the $7, $8 an hour job. Right. So you got different facets for different folks, but you got to coordinate the efforts together, and that's what's so unique about this group is that we're all kind of finding our silo, and we're staying in that silo, and which makes it so we're not duplicating efforts. Right. And that's an important part, is you don't want to have 4 people doing the same thing. Right. Let's they've got a feeding ministry on Monday night, so they're doing a great job at that. And they've also got some other programs. But let's find the things that we're lacking, and let's try to fill that gap or that hole with another group, be it a church.
That's key. Coordination minimizes duplication.
Absolutely.
Tell us some other folks that just from the different communities you've been involved in, some of the other sectors that or partners that were just kind of staying in their silo but weren't cooperating. Yeah. But now they see, boy, if we can get the faith community and our public officials and so on and so forth involved, I'm in. You know, you got other examples?
Absolutely, and I'll use the city of Apopka as an example. We had a meeting 2 weeks ago, I think, and we were able to have representatives from Orange County Public Schools. We were able to have the Apopka Chamber of Commerce. We were able to have Advent Health. We were able to have just this list of really key stakeholders that are needed. And I say they're needed because, on the surface, someone who's on the streets, living in their car in a local shelter, the need seems to be obvious. They need a roof over their head, and that is true. But when you go below the surface, you start to see that there's probably a collection of things that they need to have addressed, and unless you have a collective effort for that collection of things, it's really hard to help them achieve long-term stability. And so having this diverse group of key stakeholders coming together with kind of a unified vision, that's when you start to really have a substantial effect, especially on the communities of people who are experiencing homelessness, stuck in the cycle of poverty.
Yeah. Let me ask you a question. This is I wasn't able to stay at the meeting that convened a couple of weeks ago now. Had to catch a plane. What was the outcome? The city of Apopka invited in Polis Institute, who helps communities have this conversation that will then build a strategy, or at least a direction.
Sure.
How did that come out? I'm just finding out. We might as well tell everybody. How did it come out? Like, what's the next step? I mean, what were some of the conclusions that were reached that day?
Yeah.
Well, as one of the pastors who was there, what I saw come out of it is there became a unified agreement that something needs to be done. I think everybody knew that there were things that needed to be addressed, but I don't know that everybody was on the same page. I know, and Pastor Joel, you've pastored a church. When you're pastoring a church, that's your main focus. I was called to lead God's people at First Baptist Church of Apopka to bring glory to God, whatever that looks like, not to have a community resource center for the homeless or any of those things. However, God laid that in our lap, and so I knew that some things needed to be done, and now other churches recognize that there were some things that needed to be done, but I don't think any of us were really working together. I think everybody wanted to, but we're too busy and didn't have time to collaborate on our efforts. So what this meeting did is it brought all of those different people together to say, listen, if we do this together, we've got a chance. If we don't do it together, it's just going to be talk. But it did lead to another meeting that will then take what seems to be a direction now towards a strategy, and I think that's the key. Is we've got to get to that strategy, and we're not quite there yet, but I do believe we're one step closer. And our ministry is called Next Step, and so we're one step closer, and we'll keep doing it. And,
that's right.
And we'll see what God can do. But when Evan was talking about the collaborative effort, I think what I'm seeing from where I'm at is we've got a place called Loaves and Fishes that that does a great job with food ministry and has a lot of agencies that assist them. So I just keep telling our church, we don't want to duplicate what they're doing. We want them to do that, and we want to funnel people who need that help to them. And then we've got the big Potato Foundation. As soon as we started doing this, they began bringing us resources that they had that were able to be a part of this. And so we're watching all of the different Apopka community agencies start to say, let's all do this together, and that's what's happening.
That's so cool. And I noticed Sister Ann was there with they have a migrant ministry, and so that's what we do. We just kind of the scripture says man makes his plan, but God orders the steps.
That's exactly
and
right.
so we're always. But Mayor, long term, what would you like to see in the city of Apopka? What are your hopes that Apopka really does well?
Well, we do a lot of things well. I think at some point we want to look at some kind of housing that we could, have not only for the chronically homeless, but for the transitional homeless, which to me is even more important. You got a family that is one paycheck away from losing their house, so they lose their house. Can we get them back in 3 months or 6 months to a point where they can go get, put the deposit down on their rent? They can get their power turned back on and the water turned back on. So, those are the families you really want to try to help. And I'll give you a perfect example. This weekend, there was a family down on 8th Street in Apopka that the house burned down. Fortunately, nobody was killed, but from what I gather, I haven't gotten confirmed, but 16 people lived in that house.
Oh my goodness!
So obviously, there are more than 2 to a room, not the ultimate kind of living conditions. So, those are the kind of folks you really want to help. Not only to get them back into a house, but then how do we get them where we have a family per house, not 3 or 4 families per house? And so, long term, we want to look at that. And my vision would be is the faith-based community could take care of the manning it, resourcing it, and maybe the city comes in with the resources to buy the facility. I think that's kind of where we've gotten. But what's so interesting, if you go back 18 months, before First Baptist really started, the community was not even ready to help at all. They said, you know what, they're not our problem. Send them to Orlando. Let's, And so it's been a slow, small baby steps to get us to where we are today, where everybody now understands. Okay, we've got this problem. We have our problem here in Apopka as well as every other community. Right. We need to take care of our own. Yeah. But we're not. But I think and pretty much everybody is on board with that. But they're still not. They're scared that will be such a good job that we'll get people from Orlando.
That's always the fear, isn't it?
And so that's we've got to make sure that everybody's comfortable that we won't take care of our own. That's our mission. Yeah. But we're going to do a good job of that. But we're not looking to add.
Of course not.
Well, we have a half dozen that get on a bus to come to Apopka on Monday nights because it's such a good experience. But they tell me they come for God's word. I don't always know that that's true, but I pray that it is.
So. I hope so too.
And matter of fact, I forgot to mention on the hepatitis A event. I forgot to mention Advent Health because they gave bus passes away, which was also kind of the carrot to the folks to get vaccination. Because trust me, I'm not a guy that loves shots. So I stay away from them as much. But the bus pass maybe. So anyway, that was another partner. So we had 5 or 6 partners there just to get these vaccinations done.
Thank you for what you're doing. You're pioneers. You really are. And with as with every pioneering effort, there is a lot of humility that goes into this, but your compassion is evident. And so thank you for what you're doing. I hope it really is a model because we need a model. And thank you for watching. These discussions are just that. They're discussions between us. But we'd love to see you continue the discussions at home.
Amen.
Or go one step further. Get involved.
That's right.
Because when power talks, you're empowered through the voice of truth. Yes. See you next time.
You just watched Power Talks, a Good Life 45 original production that makes you part of our Hope Team here on Good Life 45, where hope happens.